Hey everyone, how's everybody doing? Today we're going to talk about the hero sizing element that is available in the Toolit helpful functions kit. So this kit contains multiple elements, actually contains two elements and a couple of actions that you can find very useful. The element that we're going to be talking about today is the hero sizing. The purpose of the hero sizing element and how it became, or how the idea became to be, is what if I wanted to center something in the middle of the page? For example, I have a page that ends here. Its height is 137 pixels, and I have text that I want to center in the middle of the page. By placing the hero sizing element on top of that, it will expand and push this text to reach the middle of the page. Of course, this is done with an offset, and I will describe what the offset is in just a minute. But first, let's have a look at how this page looks like. So, as you can see, the page has rendered, and the hero sizing element has read the size of the viewport of the browser and centered the text in the middle of the page. So how does it work? Well, let's examine the console log. And to see all the console log information that the hero sizing element produces, I can just come here to the inspector and remove this check mark beside suppress console logs. Now if we reload the page, you can see some information is presented about the element itself. If we read this out, it says hero sizing element 123, that's its ID that I gave it, has been resized to 374.8 pixels from a current window height of 937 with a manual offset of 562. So the way it basically works is like this. When you place the element on the page and the page renders or it's being viewed, it reads the current viewport size from the top and the bottom of the page, then sets itself to that height, after which it reads the offset that you gave it. So I'm giving it an offset in percentage. You can also do pixels. I'm giving it an offset of 60%. So it converts 60% of the 974 and minuses it from the 974 again, and basically expands to that height until an effect like this is reached. So to better understand this, I'm just going to hit inspect here and hover over it, and you can see that the current client height is 937 and the offset is 60%. So that gave it basically a height of 562. So how would you use this to achieve a hero effect on the page? Well, let's take a look at that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up another app where we can play around and see how we can achieve a hero effect and some nice effects by putting multiple items on the page and multiple hero sizing elements on the page, and how you can work around achieving the look that you want. Okay, so I've been looking through Pinterest, and I found this nice Instagram post of a Nike website that somebody has designed. And when you take a look at the website that's currently in front of you, it appears to be a hero image where the Nike word is almost at the bottom of the viewport. And what's happening here is also the picture is stretched so that it also ends at the viewport along with these other two divs over here on the right. Now this button here can be achieved with a floating group, or you can actually position it in either one of those groups and offset a negative X and Y value to achieve what you're trying to do here. But I think this is a good example that we can go through. It will highlight and display some of the features that the plugin has, and maybe give you some inspiration about how to design your next website. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to head over to my plugin development app, and I'm going to create a new page. Sorry, wrong button. So I'm just going to call this hero example. All right, and first thing I'm going to do is when the page loads, I'm going to set this page to 1200 or a full width, and I'm going to leave it as responsive. Now, before we continue further, let's go back to the image and examine how we can configure the groups in a way that will make our life a whole lot easier. And by looking at this, I know the impulse is to draw a group for this white area here, add another group that holds the image here, or an image, and put two groups on top of each other here. Well, that's good, but it's a wrong way to go, because you got to understand what's happening here is there's actually a group that's holding all of this together, and within that div, within that group, okay, there's a background, and that background is this image here. Now there's another div that is placed where it's with its constrained somehow, which is this white area here, and these two divs on the right can belong to either the main div in the background or another div in itself. But let's just jump into it and see how we can do it. So right off the bat, what I'm going to do is, and I always do this, whenever I'm designing something like this, I don't worry too much about the div that's holding everything together. I just want to get everything on the page as fast as possible, and then from there take it forward and kind of group everything together later. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an image, or I'm going to add an image that holds the Nike logo, and I already got the Nike logo ready. So here's a Nike logo, and I'm going to set this to 95 by 58, and of course I prepared all of this beforehand, so I'm just showing you how to lay it out. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a text and maybe set it to Open Sans with a size 12 to kind of get the menu here, the men's and women's. So I'm going to write here men's in capital, and I'm going to copy that over and type here women. And what I'm going to do here is also I want the text to be spaced apart a little bit more, so I'm just going to come here to letter spacing, and I'm going to set this to a 5. I'm going to center all of those and also center it in the middle and kind of get it aligned with the menu here. I want them spaced out, but I don't want them spaced out too much so they don't appear weird. So I think that will do it. All right, so we got that ready. Let's work on that Nike text here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do here is same thing. I'm going to copy over this, place it somewhere around here, and I'm just going to type the two letters NI in one text input and one text element, and KE in another. So NI, and I'm going to set the spacing to really be far apart here, so like around 40. And I really want this to be big, exactly like the example. So I'm going to get this right first. Now I know what's going to happen here. Once this page shrinks, its width shrinks, its responsiveness kicks in and it shrinks, it's going to push that text on top of each other. So I need to leave extra spacing here on the right. And I don't need this line spacing here to be set to 1.4. I can just leave it to 1. So I can save as much space as I can. And let's see here, so okay, so maybe have this around 150, shrink this up a bit, I would say around here, and duplicate that over below, leaving a small gap. That is where the KE is going to go. So there we go, there's Nike. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to group these together because I don't want them to be apart. I don't want them to come apart. So group them, and I'm going to align them with the top here. So I'm going to leave a bit of gap. It doesn't really matter how much gap you use, but remember the gap that you use is actually the minimum gap that you have to live with. So what I mean is, once the hero element is on the page, what I'll do is it'll actually stretch and shrink, but it cannot shrink beyond 0. So it cannot shrink beyond beyond its zero height. So the smaller you design this in height wise, the better it is. But for the purposes of demonstration, I'm just going to leave some gap here. So I'm just going to place it somewhere around here. Kind of get this aligned here to the left. All right, I'm also going to do the same thing here. I'm going to group all those together. All right, great. So now I got this set up. What I need to work on is this image here and these two boxes. So what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to work on these two boxes first, and then swing back around and work on the image to kind of give me perspective of how much space I'm going to be working with. Okay, so I'm going to place a group here on the right. And if we imagine the page, let's just take an imaginary number here and set our page to it so it'll make it easier when we're working. Let's imagine the page has a height of 600. So this is what I'm working with. This 600 pixel height is going to be our hero. So I'm going to give this 130 pixel width, kind of put it here on the side. And I know the page is 600, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a height of 300 here. And I'm going to copy this again under it. And as you can see now, the page terminates exactly where that group terminates, right? Okay, so let's get that color code that he's using here. I have a nice Chrome extension that helps me with color codes called Eyedropper Color Picker. And I can just click here, and I'm just going to get any color from here, it doesn't really matter, and kind of hit a gradient. And maybe put that color again, but this time I will just offset it just a tiny bit to give a gradient. I don't like top and bottom linears. I like to always go with custom, so maybe set it around 300. So that gives it a nice kind of shade that we can work with. Let's get the color code for this here, this red. It really pops out, it's really nice. Here we go. So that is the color code for that. And we're just going to go with a flat color, nothing else. All right. I can see also from the image that he has an icon that he set here as a search, and maybe, I can't make these out, but I don't know, there could be social media links, so maybe we can add a couple of icons that can help us there. All right. So I really hate the Font Awesome, the Font Awesome search glass. It's really fat and ugly, and I really don't care for it much. Whatever you do with it, it's still fat and ugly. So I don't know. I guess Bubble needs to add somehow Font Awesome 5 natively in this. So I'm going to go with material icon on the search glass, on the magnification glass, and I'm going to set this to white, and maybe I will go with a height of, I don't know, 24 pixels. That sounds about right. I'm going to keep this a little bit wide, so maybe 34, so it'll be easier to handle. I'm going to center that in there. And yeah, I want that to be at the top, but I also want it to start at, or end where the, start where the menu ends, right? So I'm just going to keep everything aligned so I can give that nice sense of conformity throughout the website. All right, so with the social media icons, I'm going with Font Awesome because Material doesn't have those, so I'm going to go with Instagram here. And same thing, I'm going to go with a height of 24 by 34 width. Perfect. So I'm just going to change the color here and maybe duplicate that over. All right, perfect. So I'm going to set that as Twitter. I'm going to set that as Facebook. There we go. I wasn't searching there for a second. And the way I'm going to put this is, I'm going to move this a bit down, since I know now the page is 600 by 600. That is my target for a hero. So I'm just going to move it down a bit. Going to leave some gap. Preferably the gap I want to leave is the exact same gap that I have here on the left. And if I come here to my X and Y, I can see I have an X of 60. So I'm just going to put that as 61. I'm going to put it as 60 to make my life simpler. And I'm also going to move that to 60. And now I know that I have 60 on the left. I need 60 from the bottom. So the way I usually do this is I just move the group all the way to the bottom. Okay. 1 second. Yeah, we got a 60. It's really hard because the page keeps moving. But I'll tell you what, let's eyeball this for now and we can change it later. All right, so I'm just going to leave that right there. So I want the icons to be constrained within this region here. So right now I have them laid up on the top. I just want the first icon to start at the top here. So I'm just going to move it along. Yeah, that looks good. I'm going to throw Facebook anywhere in there. And I'm going to have Twitter terminate at the bottom. There we go. And then I'm going to distribute all of those vertically. There we go. So now it has a little bit more uniformity throughout. Okay, so the next step. So we got this right. And there's still ways to go on this. This video isn't going to be too long. It's just a demonstration of what you can do. Now let's get the image in there. So before we get the image in there, since we already have the layout that we want to achieve, we need to prepare for the image. I'm going to imagine this image is displayed in a group that has no background, so it's transparent, right? And the way I'm going to go with this is I'm going to group these two parts here together and stretch out the box and leave it transparent. This way, whenever these groups here on the right move or change, they will be part of the bigger picture, and it will allow us to kind of get a uniform effect throughout and not have to worry about shrinking and managing groups separately. So for example, if I was to put this image in a separate div that is transparent so we can have the picture go through it, then I'll have to manage the width of this separately and then the width of this separately and so on and so on, and it could be a big mess, so it could become a mess real fast. So I'm just gonna highlight these two groups here and I'm gonna group them, and then I'm gonna stretch this out. And we know our page is 1200, so we want this to be 600 pixels. So I'm just gonna stretch it here to 600. Oh, so close. Yeah, the mouse doesn't always get it. Okay, who cares? 601. I'm not gonna waste anybody's time on this. All right, so I think we're set up now to kind of introduce the image. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select this group, this and that, and group them all together. And now that I have them grouped, I'm gonna stretch this group all the way to the edges of the page. And then I'm gonna introduce here an image. So let's go ahead and introduce an image as a background. So I already have an image prepared. So we're gonna wait for that to upload. There we go, that's the image. No, it's not a guy's foot. He's wearing some Nike shoes. So I'm gonna center the image and I'm gonna make it as wide as apparent. All right. Now I want this area to be always white. And the way I'm gonna go about this is I'm gonna select these two again, and I'm gonna group them, and I'm gonna set the background as white. And this time I'm gonna stretch this to meet the edges of all of the groups that I just created. All right, so before we go ahead and insert any hero images on this, let's take a look at the responsiveness view and what we can do to improve this before we even go in any previews. So I'm gonna hit responsive. All right, so I'm not gonna worry too much about the mobile view when it shrinks down to tablet and mobile. All I care about is this view over here and how it stretches. You can see that's what's happening right now is this group over here doesn't have a maximum width and stretches all the way, but this group over here is set to fixed width. So I'm gonna uncheck this and I'm gonna have this stretch out, and I'm gonna change this to 20 so it can be a 50-50 split between them. All right, now these two groups over here, I can leave them to fix for now. Maybe I'll change that a little bit later, but it doesn't matter right now. I just want to get this right. Okay, so let's preview the page now and see how it looks. It's taking a bit to load. All right, so as you can see, it's working as we expect. If we take out the debugger, we kind of get a sense, without the debugger in there, of the actual sizes that we're working with. And I always suggest, whenever you're using the hero sizing element, you disable the debugger because it adds extra space at the bottom. All right. Oh, I did a mistake. It looks like I meant to set the background for this, but I set the background for the page. So sorry about that. So I'm just going to cancel that and set the background for this. Here we go. All right, now much better. Okay. What I'm also going to do is, because we want to know where this group terminates, we just need a visual indicator or a cue to know when this hero terminates. I'm just going to add a shadow to it. So I'm going to add a shadow to this group. Here, outset, I'm just going to set the horizontal to 0. I can leave this the same. The spread to 1. Black at 10%. And maybe blur at 16. So give it a nice shadow effect here. I'm going to stretch the page now a little bit more, since I'm done working with my 600 page height, so we can better understand how the hero element works, and we can better configure it to work well. All right, so I'm gonna reload the page one more time. All right, so here we go. This is the group that we made, our hero group. It's 600 pixels high right now. And as you can see, it renders correctly on the page. So the next step is to get the hero element in there and stretch out to fit the page. So let's go back to our drawing. You can see here that we have a couple of challenges that we have to deal with. The first challenge is stretching out the page and keeping the Nike at the bottom, near the bottom of the hero, of the viewport. Also, we need to stretch out these groups here on the right. Okay, so they are at 50-50 split of the total viewport height. So the way I would do this is I would place a hero element between these two groups over here to kind of push the space apart. And working with this is really a trial and error. So you might have to adjust its settings a couple of times to kind of understand and get it right. But it's fairly easy to do. It's just trial and error. So I have this hero sizing element now in the middle. Its purpose is to stretch the groups, stretch the space between these two groups that I have here, the one at the top and the one at the bottom. I'm going to give this the ID of hero. So I'm just going to call it hero. And I know that I don't need it to stretch the whole viewport height of 937, I think, because there's a lot of space here at the top and a lot of space here at the bottom. So I'm just going to offset this, and I'm going to offset it by a percentage. There is no good and bad starting point with this, so you will have to actually make a guess. I'm guessing around, let's see here, around 25%. So I'm going to start off with 25% and see what happens. All right, it's taking a second to load, guys. Sorry. All right, so 25%. Oh, that's very close. That's a very close first guess. And you can see it stretched out the height between them. It pushed it all the way to the bottom. And because it is inside a group, and this group is inside of the group under it, it also stretched those groups out. So you can see that the shadow starts, I think, almost where the page ends, or the viewport ends, which is a perfect guess from the first try. I can call that lucky. All right, so let's work on the groups here on the right and stretch those out. Then we'll get back to the image and kind of make it a little bit better. So yeah, the way you would do this is you will be tempted to actually throw this somewhere in here and kind of put it like this, but this is absolutely wrong, because what we want to do is we want to maintain the distance of this icon from the top. So we're going to put this right below the icon here and stretch it all the way down. So we want the stretch to actually start from the icon, from the bottom of the icon, all the way down. And I'm gonna set this at around 50% or 30%. So I'm just gonna call this spacer 1. And I'm gonna set this maybe around, yeah, I don't know. Let's try 70%. And let's have a look. Oh, that's way too much. So let's go back and revise our numbers. Oh, I didn't change it to percent. It was on pixels. Okay, one more try. Okay, so that looks much better. Let's now try to work with the group, the red group here, and see what we can do with that. So I want the stretch to happen from the top this time. And I'm gonna name this spacer 2, and I'm gonna work with 85% on this one. It might have to go to like a decimal. You can of course put like 85.2, 85.3 to get it absolutely right. Okay, so we didn't do much with this, so we need to reduce that number. So let's go with 70 and give that a try. All right, so it took a bit of tinkering around, but I finally got it where I want it to be. And as you can see here, the group terminates at the end of the hero group, and the final value was actually 67.8%. But that doesn't matter. Now that we're done, we can actually shift our attention to the last part of this design, which is the image. As you can see here, the image is actually stretched, and what I mean by stretched is it actually fills out the whole div that's behind this white area here. So the image actually starts all the way from the right side of the page all the way to the left. And what we want to do is we want to adjust it so that it basically displays or focuses within this area on the right. Now there is no way to really do this in Bubble. You would actually have to write custom CSS for this, but it's fairly easy to do. So I'm just going to right click here and inspect this element. I'm going to turn off responsive view so you kind of get an idea of what's happening here. And what I'm going to do is fairly simple. Is I want to locate first the div in the DOM that contains this image. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to click at either one of these, it doesn't matter. And I'm just going to navigate my way up all the way up here. All right. And as you can see, this is a background image that we are using. And if I open this in a new tab, you can see here it is. So what we have to do is first we'll have to make a few adjustments to CSS. First we're going to say background, what was it? Background, sorry, position. And we're going to say that this is on the right. So we're going to move this all the way on the right. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to adjust the background size. So we're just going to say background size. And we're going to put this as cover. And you can see here we're having much more success showing it the way we want to show it. So I'm just going to leave it at cover. And there we go. You can actually do the position, the X and Y by pixel to kind of get this exactly where you want it. So instead of saying right, you can actually adjust this pixel wise. But I'm just going to leave it here. And the way I would actually implement this in Bubble is I will just copy these two properties that I just added. And I will go to the group that's holding the image, which is under here. Double click there. Give this group an ID. I'm going to call it hero. And I would go then to the page's header, to the HTML editor, and add this here. And the way I would add it by ID is by using the hash. We can just paste those and close my style tag. All right. Another thing you have to note here is Bubble will always attempt to rewrite this CSS when a page is generated. So we got to give this some importance. So I'm just going to write here important. This way it will override all the other CSS properties that are being generated by the app. Now I know this is not going to work in my app because my app is on a hobby plan. This is just for plugin development. So the way I would make this actually work is I need to place an HTML tag, HTML element on the page and paste those here. And this could be anywhere on the page, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to leave it here. So here we go. So this is before, and now we're going to take a look after. All right. So that's looking a bit better, but it's not exactly where I want it to be again. And they are here, right and left. But then again, you will have to kind of play around with this and get it exactly where you need it to be in terms of position and stretching and so on, which I'm not going to waste any more time doing because to kind of get it perfect, it will take a while. But if we're going to take a look at another page that I prepared before I started this example, just kind of a proof of concept before I started recording this video. That is actually done, and we can take a look at it here to see the end result after all the little tinkering. So here it is in its final form. Yeah. So then again, here it is. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you soon.